Hello, and welcome to the Kedamono Opera actual play, brought to you by LionWing Publishing. Vern from the future here. Before the curtains rise, I wanted to go over a few things. Kedamono Opera, unlike other TTRPGs, has character creation done within a session, after the introduction is read out. As such, we have recorded the introduction in a separate video. It goes over the world of Kedamono Opera and the characters you'll encounter in this recording. Secondly, Kedamono Opera can address some uncomfortable topics, so I am here to provide some content warnings for the session you are about to watch. The following will contain mild body horror, hallucinogenic visions, mind break, accusations of witchcraft, actual witchcraft, and murder. Now, without further ado, please enjoy the Kedamono Opera actual play.
Hello, and welcome to Kedamono Opera. My name is Churcher, and I will be your GM for the evening. Joining me are Fern and Yuki. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello!
And we will be showcasing this game for you tonight. Kedamono Opera is about stories of the Kedamono themselves. Kedamono dwell within the dark forest, and they look like giant monsters. And most of them seem to be similar to animals. On occasion, they look like humans. But they feed on human souls. That is because they do not own souls of their own, and they are trying to find some way to get the soul themselves. The game is about these Kedamono, and the players play as Kedamono. And we frame this in the form of a stage play, an opera, if you will. This game has 3 phases to it. We have the prelude, where we set up the story, create our Kedamono, and get things ready for the curtains rising. Then we get to be on stage, which is the actual play of the game itself, where we go through scenes, our Kedamono go through ordeals and trying to solve issues, and ultimately come to the conclusion of the story. Afterward, we hit the curtain call, which is where the Kedamono will advance in their legend, and we reflect upon what has happened within the story itself. This part, we're going to go through the prelude, so that you have an understanding of what it looks like from the very beginning. The prelude is very easy and straightforward. A lot of stuff has already been handled off screen, if you will, such as deciding who's going to GM, what time you're going to meet up, and all this stuff. However, I will now introduce the scenario with the intro. Imagine, if you will, a world of sword and sorcery. A fictional medieval world where the foundation of society is the worship of the Lord of Light. A young nun named Teresa found herself in the domain of the Kedamono within the dark forest. Her village was on the brink of certain doom, beset by a plague that brought noble rot even to humans. Led by legends of a holy grail, who would be healed from anyone who drank of it, she had no choice but to come here. But the dark forest is no place for humans, and so Teresa asks for help from the Kedamono. Now the Kedamono must set off on a journey with the sister to find this holy grail together. So let's talk about what kind of Kedamono you wish to play. But you do have 2 requirements from me and the scenario. 1, your Kedamono must live in the dark forest. If you're not there, you can't participate, sorry. 2, your Kedamono would be willing to grant Teresa's wish. You just can't outright eat her for no reason. Otherwise, the story doesn't go anywhere and it kind of becomes a little dull. So think about what you would want to do with those 2 requirements. You have to be in the dark forest, and you want to grant her wish. So let's go ahead and start creating our Kedamono. First off is choosing what kind of species of Kedamono you would be. This can be anything from a giant spider to a dragon to a living rose. A lot of options are available here. What are you thinking of?
As for my species, I was looking at the Mimistrix, uh, simply because I have like a slight obsession with ravens and crows, um, and it works for me because there's a subspecies called the Hugenmugen, and generally I know that it's said that they were mostly collectors of art, um, but in this case, I think it's going to be a combination of like art, knowledge, trinkets, shiny things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how about for you, Fern?
I have been looking at the Dread Hair because of their abilities to manipulate fortune and probability and their connection to madness.
Ooh, interesting. Now that you've picked your species, you now get your opera. Imagine this as like your big ultimate ability. This is the thing that you get to do once per game session, and it is the defining like idea and ability of your Kedamono. They have a requirement, and they have a large ability that goes behind it. Each of those are going to be recorded down for your Kedamono. We won't reveal them just yet, for it'll become a little more interesting for when you listen through the actual play itself. Additionally, you have 5 feats that are recorded automatically for your Kedamono. These are your smaller abilities, still very powerful, very majestic in some regards. And they range in power level between C, B, and A. Uh, let's go ahead and take a look at what these feats themselves are. So, Yuki, what feats do you have for your Magistrix?
I have Soaring Raptor, Living Encyclopedia, Cloak of Feathers, Night Sentinel, and Forbidden Spell.
Sounds interesting. Fern?
Got one called Wind Vane Ears, Harmless Fluff, the Headhunter Blade, Psychokinesis, and Redshift Eyes.
Going to be real interesting there. Next up, we have your authority. There are 4 authorities within the game, and when you make a check around these authorities, you get to have the option to re-roll. So this is a think of it like a specialty. There are 4 of violence, cunning, benevolence, and sagacity. Which ones are you choosing?
I'm choosing Sagacity.
I'll go for Cunning then.
Easy enough. Next up, you have your legend. This is what your Kedamono is really known for. Like in the world of the area, like there are legends told about you in particular. What is this legend?
Um, that my Kedamono um, is really is enthralled by this thing called humanity. So they love humans and find them very interesting.
I'm in favor of the Unending Mission legend. So my Kedamono has a specific purpose or mission, and their entire being is dedicated to it.
Excellent, excellent. Next up, we have desire. What does your Kedamono really want out of this? Why do they put up with humanity as it is? Why do you not just eat them all? What do you crave?
As for my Kedamono, they crave curiosity and knowledge, and you can't gain that with if you eat eat all the humans.
It's true.
I chose Aestet. My Kedamono wants to watch and experience basically the tragedies, the triumphs of humanity.
Excellent. Next up, we will talk about what your lures look like. Now, every Kedamono has a lure of some sort. they look like humans, and might even act like humans, but they are definitively not human, at least not traditionally. I know with the Magistrix and the Dreadhair, your lures are a little bit more uh, enticing in some regards.
Do you want us to like go into how they how they look, or just names, or
Uh, go into as much detail as you would like.
okay?
So a Dreadhair lure is actually a separate entity from the Dreadhair itself. Um, and in all accounts, it is a fully functional human but without a soul. So I chose as the form a gentleman with a pocket watch. And by all accounts, from it looks, it just looks like some comely man who is well dressed and lives in some sort of mansion out in the dark forest, probably. Uh, but he shares the name of the Kedamono, Seralis, which means truth in some languages.
Ooh, that's not suspicious whatsoever.
Right. So so my lure, uh, with the way the magistrics work, usually it's a human that comes to the Kedamono, and either they've got nothing left to lose, a terminal illness, something, um, and they come and they make a contract with the Kedamono, uh, and then once they make that contract, they become the lure, and then after a certain period of time, that person is released, and basically time stops for them when they enter the contract. When they finish the contract, time starts again for them. So they're essentially immortal for a while. Mine is an orphan teen named Perdita. Looks just a girl. Um, Dark hair, dark eyes, dressed in a fairly nice dress. Um, and she lives in an abandoned library with the Kedamono. And that library is within Soralis's mansion in the Dark Forest.
It looks like we did cover the dwelling in that part, and we've heard most of the names that we need to hear. Yuki, what's your Kedamono's name?
My Kedamono's name is Lady Evanbeek.
Excellent. And then the details we can get a little bit more when we start getting onto stage. Next up, we will decide our intro portents. Portents are a very important part of the game itself. What they are statements that will eventually must become true. No matter what, you have to work to make sure that these portents actively come true. They have to happen within the story itself. When you use certain abilities, your feats will come with portents. If you fail ordeals, they will come with portents. And these portents aren't always good. Most times they will cause complications that you will have to deal with. But the nice thing about portents is that you get to decide when to activate them. You get to decide when that thing will become true, as long as, it makes sense within the story. There are two portents for this scenario, and you both have to take a separate one. The first portent is that you gave Teresa the Grail and saw her home safely. The second portent is that you protected Teresa from the tragedy of the Grail. Who wants which portent?
What are you thinking, Yuki?
Well, I'm thinking protected Teresa from the tragedy of the Grail if it's a knowledge thing.
Okay. Then I will take the first one.
Excellent. So mark these down as your portents. And as a note, there is one additional thing I will mention here, is that Teresa herself is a young nerd, about 17 years old, and she has been completely heartbroken by this plague. But she is still human. She's a relatively innocent human. And so there is a taboo. If you are spotted in breaking this taboo, you will gain an additional portent that I get to trigger. If you break the taboo of slaughtering the innocent, then Teresa will grow fearful and fled from you. So just note that that is something that can happen if you decide to go on a murderous rampage through the land. Is that it will break the portents that you have, or at least make it much more difficult to assist her when she's terrified of you. Next, let's set our initiative. We don't need to roll dice for this. Between the two of you, decide who wants to go first whenever we get into an ordeal, or essentially a type of conflict.
Do you think you'd be pretty impulsive there, Fern?
Uh,
Seem like it'd be more of the I'm gonna hang back and look at things.
yeah, I think. What were you saying? You were gonna hang back and look at things?
No, you were.
No, that works for me.
So we'll have Sorales go first, followed by Lady Ebonbeak. Excellent. And the final thing we need to do for this prelude is determine what pack you are a part of. Kedamono, in and of themselves, are a little territorial because not that many humans wander around in the Dark Forest, so food is a little bit scarce. However, you can see temporary or even permanent alliances between Kedamono to fight off other Kedamono or to share their resources and overcome even greater problems. There are many types of packs out there. One, it could just be that a human wanted you to work together and you both decided to do so. One could see the other one as weaker and pledge to protect them. Another could just be, we're neighbors, and we can be friendly at that. What kind of pack are you looking at forming?
So I've been looking at the Dread Hair lure, and the lure itself needs to be observed lest it randomly dies because they're very fragile. So if I may suggest the Pact of the Watchers and have was it Lady Darkbeak?
Ebonbeak. Lady Ebonbeak.
Ebonbeak, my apologies. And have Lady Ebonbeak watch my lure and essentially my Kedamono from that.
Yeah, we want to make sure you stay alive and not
Uh,
have to make another one.
because my Kedamono does not live in this mansion at the moment.
The human does,
The human does, yep.
or the lure does not.
And that brings us to the end of our prelude. The stage is set, the players are ready, the audience eager and willing to see how this story plays out. So, let us begin.